this is Jackie with Cannabitch, and I'm here with my guest. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
My name is Niambe McIntosh. I am the daughter of the legendary reggae musician and activist Peter Tosh, who was a founding member of the Wailers, and then went on to have a solo career. Wrote the iconic song "Legalize It," which was written over 40 years ago. I also am the head of his estate and his brand and legacy. And his foundation. We founded his foundation as well. And I hold many hats. So PT Capital, on the president of that, and also launched an initiative called Justice for Jawara, which is about my brother, and we'll get into a little bit about that as well. In my capacity as the administrator of the Tosh estate and brand and legacy, my responsibility is really just to carry on his mission, continue to look for opportunities to make sure that his name can live on long after I'm gone.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. So yeah, let's quickly talk about the work you do with your father's legacy and the foundation. Why is your father such an important voice for activism and for cannabis legalization in particular?
Well, the song that he wrote in 1975 and then released in 1976 really became a global anthem for the movement. And so many people don't know is although that he's Jamaican, he's Rastafarian, and smoke, like there's probably very few images that you can see him not with a spliff in his mouth or not consuming cannabis, but that was a sacrifice. He was targeted many times, brutalized even by the police, and it wasn't an easy thing for him to do. But oftentimes during his performances or during his interviews, he said it's my human right to consume. And so he really paved the way for where we are today and the progress that we have today in cannabis.
And how did you personally come into this activism and come into managing his legacy? I know that you have other siblings. Was it just something that you personally felt called to do, or is there something about the message in particular, or?
Prior to running my dad's estate, I was an educator in Boston public schools, and it wasn't something that I really understood to be mine. When you have when no one really prepares you for it. It's just like, okay, my dad's Peter Tosh, and that's just what it is. You know, you don't really, yeah, you don't necessarily. And I'm not in the music industry. I think if I was raised and nurtured within the industry and understood the business, then it would I would have just kind of been automatic. But after high school, and then I decided to teach, well, with engineering, then teaching for 10 years. And it was, all of the family kind of had some level of involvement, but my father's estate was run by a public administrator from 1987, the year that he died, all the way up until 2009, okay, when I took over. Yeah. Wow. And so we would meet as a family with the public administrator, the legal team, the lawyer that was representing the administration at that time, and never really felt like it was ours. We've never really had that kind of that we were never prepared for it, and it was just ignorance. And so it took a little bit of time to get to the point where we're like, wait a minute, this is ours. Like, we are the ones that, and I just thought that the public administrator was supposed to be there. You know, I didn't know that's just the trajectory of the way things went, and no one really educated us about the process. And so I had two older brothers that were a lot more involved and very, very much opinionated. And so I think that oftentimes there would be like differences, like that would just be the family divide. You're either going to agree with this brother or you're going to agree with that brother. And it was difficult to make progress that way. I always say it's the male ego that that gets in the way of that progress, and I'm sure many of your fans can relate. And so I just was like, hey, I threw my hat and was like, hey, what about me? And people, my family knows me to be very family oriented. I have some education background, master's degree in education, and it was a fit. Everyone was like, oh, it was kind of like, you know what, that's a good idea. I think Niambe's a good candidate for that. And it was a kind of a hands down, the family all just agreed. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. So it was really learning through the School of Hard Knocks. We had an old management team and lawyers and stuff that, you end up learning over time what serves you best. We in the beginning, we were always the last ones to get paid, and it was just like, this is not, you go through a point of kind of going through the journey that you have to go through in order to learn what not to do, and I appreciate the journey. So we ended up getting rid of the whole team, and now we have a manager by the name of Brian Latour, who has been in the music industry for many, many years, and really came in putting us first. And it was easy. It's been a godsend. And so, like, really just is about, like, I want to see you guys succeed, and puts everything, his all, like, blood, sweat, and tears into, so a true blessing. Yeah, and then I had a niece jump in and start helping out as well, and she's been a godsend. I'm like the visionary, she's the like, okay, I see you up in the clouds, Niambe, but what are we doing today? And so I understand this big picture, but today you have a call at 2:00, so that's been extremely helpful. And so the three of us really are the core of the brand. And then I have a brother that jumped in, Nabi, who's based in Belgium, to help out with the foundation. And so we've launched the foundation to then look at all of my father's vision and passion, and really be able to fulfill that work. We have 5 initiatives out of the foundation. The first one is really just the museum. We opened up a museum in Kingston, Jamaica back in 2016. And so that was a super awesome accomplishment. And then the other initiatives, the Legalize It initiative is really geared at partnering with different organizations. We've partnered with M for MM, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, as well as the Last Prisoner Project, and really looking at ways to just educate people about the plant, about it as medicine, the science behind it, but also the inclusivity of the industry, and really promoting and educating how we can have equity within the cannabis industry. We also have a Can't Blame the Youth initiative. Children are a love of mine, so making sure that the message of equal rights and justice and all of those messages that my father stood for kind of bridges to the next generation. And so we do workshops with young people. We've done them in Jamaica, we've done them here, and I've done some here in Boston, and done a workshop also just in different parts of the US as well, where really just touch on, I try to like do a workshop that touches on like all of the different elements from wellness and mindset, and because my father was very spiritual and very much into just like, as Rasta, there's this like wholeness of self, where understanding, being really conscious about the world around you, the injustices that exist, for you to be conscious about them, to then prevail, and understanding that wellness of the mind, body, and spirit has to come first in order to be successful. So we do workshops with young people of all ages as well. And then we have the Global Community Initiative, and that's just partnering with different organizations across the globe to fulfill small community-centered programs and help out in that way. And lastly is the Justice for Jawara initiative. And so I'm sure some of your fans may not know, but Jawara is my father's youngest son. And in 2013, he was arrested for cannabis possession. and in New Jersey. And it was Father's Day weekend when he was arrested. He did not have a hearing until 3 months later in September of 2013. At that point is when my family, we're based in Boston, and we all went over to, my mom and everybody went to the hearing to hear prosecutors and the judge offer a 20-year plea. And so my brother has never been arrested before, as a father of four, advocate for cannabis Rasta as well, following believer of the Rastafarian faith. And that was just it. That's when we was like, oh wow. Before then I just thought it would be something that would pass. I was like, all right, although this is something that we've never experienced before, I'm like, it will pass. And so at that point, when I realized it was a really serious situation, he ended up making bail in December of 2013. And from 2013 all the way up until 2016, the end of the year, they kept offering him plea deals. Like, you know what, we're going to offer you 15 years. It's the best that we can do. You should take it. And then he kind of would kind of weigh his options and really think about it. He's like, wow, 15 years. And then really wanted to fight for what he believed in on one hand, as, knowing that it is a plant that my father believed in, it should be for humans to consume. And on the other hand, not wanting to be made an example, not wanting to be out of his children's lives, and maybe considering, like, maybe I do take the plea, because they said if you don't take the plea, that they're going to hit you with the maximum sentence, and they would throw all of this fear.
Remember what the maximum was?
It was the 20 years.
That was the maximum. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything less than that, and
exactly. So
rather than jail time.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was 20 years, and so between that time, I think the plea finally got down to about 5 years. And when speaking with his lawyers, they said that, it's probably likely that you can serve 1 year or 6 months or so, and a little bit of time served. You'll get, points for time served. And so you should probably take the deal. He also was in New Jersey with a female friend of his who was arrested with him. And so she actually was going through they charged her the very same charges. And so, and she was a single mom of a 3-year-old. And so she was also incarcerated at the time, and ended up getting out on bail as well after a little while, and kind of was going through the same thing. And so when he got this last plea deal or plea offer in December of 2016, one of the stipulations was that she would be dropped, the charges would be dropped for her, and he would take responsibility for it. And so with all of that pressure, he decided to take the plea deal. And he turned himself in to Bergen County Jail and this is the same jail that he was in beforehand, in January of 2017. And then in February, a month and a half later, February 21st, he was attacked by an inmate and suffered a traumatic brain injury, and to this day is unable to walk, talk, or do anything with intent, needs 24-hour care. And so, now we share his story with hopes of really having people look at and change the laws around cannabis, because it should be legal, and if one person is making money off of it in this country, no one should be incarcerated for it.
I completely agree, and I think most, if not all, of my readers will agree as well. So how is Jawara doing today? And you mentioned that he has 24-hour care, but has his condition improved?
Well, it's been a long journey. So he has improved, but it's baby steps. When the injury first happened, he was in the IC. He actually was in the ICU for about 3 months. He was in there for a month and then left for only a few days, only to come back. And then finally, was able to stabilize, and I was able to bring him home to Boston. Once he came to Boston, he was in the hospital for over 500 days. And so it was a very, very, very long journey. And so I've seen with me, with wellness and being into kind of holistic medicine, I've seen the incremental changes, things that he, like, just walk up to his bedside one day and then he'll kind of turn his head and you're like, hey, you weren't doing that, that before. His struggle to make eye contact. And there's just little things like that where he's in there, and just needs the best support. He was actually denied physical therapy because he was an inmate.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. So that was
incarceration process or status after he was attacked and in the ICU and in the hospital.
Exactly. So when we went to go see him the day that he was attacked, he was handcuffed. And this is in the ICU. He had a handcuff. He had tubes down his throat, a neck guard, and then a handcuff on his ankle. And he was surrounded by police officers. And we had to fight to see if we can get the handcuff removed. It's just like, he's practically incapacitated. Why have this? And the hospital in New Jersey, we spoke to like the director or something at the hospital, and they were like, look, the prison has hierarchy over the hospital. And that just blew my mind. They even pushed, were giving us a hard time about visiting him. They were like, you're lucky, we don't allow visitors. That exactly. I was just like, wow. And it was really because of who my brother was and who our family. I think there was a fear of some sort of backlash, but
negative.
Exactly. The negative press around it. But they were like, we don't normally allow visitors. And so I just thought about every mom or every sister or whoever that you don't even get to visit your loved one. And it's the same way actually in a lot of states. And so we don't have a family that's in and out of the criminal justice system. So it's things that were very, very new to me. And I just hurt for all of the mothers that had to go through things like that by themselves. The correction officer would like bully us around the timing that we were up there. And I'm just like, we're not
great. This is all centering around cannabis possession.
Exactly. Right. And so it runs really, really deep. I remember my brother telling me that he was locked up with someone when he was locked up the first time in 2013. There was a 17-year-old in there who had an ounce of weed who couldn't make $150 bail. And so this 17-year-old is in there with grown men.
So the number that is now legal to carry up for personal use in California under Prop 64, just to make that
exactly
in context, that's really, I mean, I know this intellectually, but then when you hear it and you put actual human faces on it and you contextualize it, it's incredibly wildly brutal to think about that.
Yeah, it's and so and that story kind of, I share that story every time because my brother had his situation, but there's many others that that don't have a platform, to speak on, and so that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important to share his story. But the whole process of just how they treated us there, finally we were able to have him released on basically because of his medical condition.
Right.
And it's a conditional release. God forbid God willing, he gets back up and starts to walk again, but they can now recharge him. And so, yeah.
And so, okay, so not only is his record not expunged or the charges have been dropped or his sentence commuted or whatever have you, he's just on essentially borrowed time because of his physical condition.
Exactly.
Wow. So this is in no way, shape, or form over yet. So what are you continuing to do to alleviate his legal status or his
Honestly, we do have a lawsuit pending against the jail, and so that's just a long process, as
I can
anyone
imagine.
can imagine. It's still in the kind of introductory stages, and since COVID started, things have just been pretty much put on hold.
Right.
Um, and that's kind of where we're starting, is just with the civil suit.
Okay.
And I think that we're hoping that things will change within New Jersey's regulations. We are pushing to address the United Nations as well, to share his story and see if there can be some sort of impact there. But it's a very long journey, and it's just one step at a
No
time.
kidding.
My focus, I literally run a holistic center at my house, and I have one patient, and so I've seen how just focusing on different aspects of his health have allowed him. I'm doing the physical therapy that he really was unable to receive.
So are you his primary caretaker?
Yes, my mother and I. Yeah, and so he lives with me. My mother lives on Martha's Vineyard, which is an island off of the coast of Massachusetts, but she's the organizer, which helps, just us be able to do what we do here. And then I am the researcher and doctor and nurse and everything else under the sun. And so we've been able to kind of see the slow progress and incremental progress. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there is progress, and I appreciate you very much sharing your story. I know that that's a painful thing to have to recount over and over, so I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that my readers do as well. So again, thank you, and for all the work that you do. So talking about the work that you do, and talking about, let's talk about legalizing it. Where are you at with your various foundational work, and what initiatives are you specifically working on right now in that area of activism? I know that there are many. You're like, which one?
No, I get it. I get it. Really, really looking at, because legalize it is so general. I think a lot of people are at the point where they're like, yes, it's legal. But the way any industry is that money talks. Money is what dominates most in any industry. And so, unfortunately, there have been people that have disproportionately been affected by cannabis prohibition, and slowly different states are starting to recognize that it's important to have some sort of reparations within the cannabis industry. And so, on paper, they talk social equity, they talk inclusiveness, but the rollout has been very, very slow for most states. And so with Legalize It and our partnership with Minorities for Medical Marijuana, as well as the Last Prisoner Project, we are pushing states to be a lot more intentional about not just having it legal and not just putting things on paper, but now really having some measures of accountability, because it's there on paper, but I think we're at like 1% of the dispensaries, the businesses that are in the industry are minority owned, and so
right.
we have to really change that, and it's really a wonderful opportunity that we have when we look at people that have been hit the hardest. And the issue now boils down to having the laws include some level of mentions loans or some opportunities for money, because at the end of the day, those that have been affected by cannabis prohibition that hits you economically as well. And so you can't, it's difficult to expect that you're going to say, hey, we have this, this opportunity for you. Oh, you have no money. Oh, sorry. Right. Right. So exactly. And so so that's where we're working now, is to push for
do you find that a lot of activism in the cannabis space in terms of prohibition is directly overlooking that aspect? Because I have to admit, the financial aspect, reparations, providing financial loans, etc., is just not something you ever hear as much in the, as you mentioned, in the legalize it structure. So would you consider yourself a thought leader in that realm? Because I feel like it's a very necessary part of lifting prohibition, but again, it's kind of the less sexy on paper solution. So people are like, oh, well, it's better just to like legalize it and then we'll figure all that later. So.
Exactly. I think that slowly states are starting to recognize that Illinois added a clause and a fund within their regulations, but I think that they're the only one at this point. And so,
as far as I know, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there's definitely still a long way to go, and then some states are still being very, specific about what types of cannabis. Maybe it's just medical, maybe it's just, maybe it's just oil, or where some states are way behind, and so it is very new. And when you listen to the more corporate side, I've heard the people say, oh, well, over-regulating is only going to do us harm. But and they're the ones lobbying to kind of keep the market open. But unfortunately, a completely open market without really carving out that safe space for those that have been affected, those spaces will never exist. They will continue to be bought up by money, and we've seen it time and time again, where yeah, exactly. So we have to have states and cities really look at having balance, where in Boston in particular, I believe that they are working on like a 1-to-1 ratio, where for every non-social equity business, there's actually going to be one social equity business. And so I think that that's, the way that the industry across the nation has to look at providing opportunities, and it really has to be intentional and just having it on paper. There's also regulations in place that give businesses incentives to diversify their establishment. One of the problems with that is that they have it on paper, but then there's no accountability afterwards. And so, all a business has to do is put some fancy presentation together about how they plan to do, a few things. But then if there's no one holding them accountable year after year, or every 6 months, or whatever type of, whatever level of consistency, then we will end up with the same status quo.
Right. That makes sense. And, just to make crystal clear, so in your opinion, cannabis is obviously a general justice issue. Is it also a racial justice issue?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's all of the statistics show that it's been Black and brown people that have been most impacted, even though everyone uses it pretty much the same. The places, if we look at Fidel Castro, some of these people that have been murdered at the hands of police, it was cannabis that they used to kind of justify their murders.
Right. There's Fidel right up there. Right over my head. Yeah.
And so, I think that it's definitely a racial issue when we. And there's going to take a lot of work in order to have people understand. I think that's one of the major issues is the education process to understand, because like I said, most people, even a lot of the fans on my like dad's Facebook page, is like, legalize it and that's it. They're like, yay, it's legal, the work is done, but most people in the general audience don't fully understand that there's a lot more work that has to happen after that.
That makes sense. And so do you find with the Black Lives Matter protests, the sudden we'll call it an awakening of social consciousness. It'll be interesting to see how, I hope everything lasts, but I'm skeptical at how long the energy can keep up. But I'm energized at the space. I mean, I'm not happy about COVID, but I'm energized by the space that COVID has given to people to finally care about things that they should have been caring about all along. How are you and the organization poised to take advantage of this moment, of this outpouring in general, and how do you fit into the framework of activism that's happening right now?
Right. Well, right now it's continuing. I do spend a lot of my time caring for my brother. That takes up a lot of time right now, and so it's typically just using whatever platforms that we can to specifically share his story, because he, like I said, he was nonviolent offender, no history of any arrests, father, Rastafari, and I think that piece is also very special because it's at the core of our faith, you know, and to be persecuted for your faith is like kind of double the injustice, you know. And so there's just different platforms that we are focused on, is just magnifying his story as much as possible.
Right. Well, good. I'm happy to play even a small part in it, so I appreciate it. Thank you. So what can people do to be involved? How can they get involved? If they're seeing this and they're outraged, what's a good actionable next step rather than just, you know, posting on Facebook?
Definitely. They can go to petertoshfoundation.org, and they can donate to the Justice for Jawara initiative, so that we can continue to do the work that we do. Also, they can help in his holistic care center that we run. Unfortunately, because everything is holistic, that's a bill that the family just pays. And so we do treat him with cannabis.
I was going to ask about that. How do you use cannabis in his treatment process?
So that's tinctures is how we started, and tinctures are actually extremely expensive, and so we do that whenever we can, and not always good. Easy to source in large quantities. He also hasn't forgotten how to smoke. So there's this muscle memory. So at times he can be too tired to do it, but on a good day, he will put the spliff or a vaporizer, usually a vaporizer, to his mouth, and he'll inhale, hold it for a little while, and then blow it out, sometimes through his nose, and you can only laugh, you know. Because I'm like, you haven't forgotten how to do that. And so
they're universal, right?
Exactly. We also we're gifted a desktop vaporizer from Airizer, which was super awesome. I just started to make sure any vendor that I reach out to, just say, hey, like, this is our story. We're already paying $1 gazillion for everything. Can you offer a discount? And they were like, we can do even better. We'll give you it for free. And so that just felt awesome, you know, and they was like, hey, by the way, we're Peter Tosh fans and we're rooting for your brother. And so I'm always looking at new ways and inventing ways because it's not something that exists. Sometimes he's really too tired to like actually inhale. And so I was like, okay, how can I invent some contraction where he can pretty much, you know, what is it? Just, you know, just have it, breathe it in naturally. And so
Hotboxing it, right?
that's the word I was looking for. I was like, hotbox. I was gonna say shotgun, but I'm like, it's not a shotgun.
You know what I mean?
Right. So pretty much, you know, where he can get that vapor and just inhale it in, and doesn't have to always put in the mental work to do so. Because it is a neuroprotectant. It does help develop brain cells, and so it's something that is definitely part of the healing process. When he first started using it, a couple of years last year, actually, when It's been so long. So yes, last year, last year when I finally got him home and was able to get him a consistent supply, that's when he started to kind of verbalize. He like would say yes, or he actually said my name one time, and I was like, oh my god. And my mother happened to be watching on the cameras at the time. She was like, oh my god, he said your name. And so there's little things like that you know, he kind of takes these ups and downs, but during COVID it really forced me to understand his health, because I was not bringing him to the hospital, and my life consists of like, at any point in time, because he can't speak or anything, I may have to go to the hospital and get an x-ray, and I kind of use them for their like equipment. I'm like, all right, I got it from here. Like, okay, I understand, I'll take him with me now. And so this forced me to really understand him a lot more, and I was able to heal him of a few different ailments with just plants, and keep him home. And I was like, now I don't think you ever have to go to the hospital. I might have, let me just get an x-ray machine and a CT scanner and we'll keep you home and build you, get you right back.
Cool. And how can people donate to his medical fund? I asked
yes, I'll say it one more time.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, not a problem. And so at petertoshfoundation.org or justiceforjawara.com, both will lead you the same place. You can donate to Justice for Jawara initiative is really about just getting his platform, sharing his story, and partnering with different organizations to improve criminal justice reform. And then there is a holistic fund that's on that same page where you can donate to his holistic fund and kind of help with the healing process.
Good. Well, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just one final question, maybe a fun one. What's your favorite song of your dad's? What resonates the most for you? And maybe this is the same and maybe it's not, but do you think there's a particular song of his that could be resonant for this moment in our collective history, everything that we're going through
yeah, definitely. Right now the anthem is equal rights and justice. He says, I don't want any peace, I want equal rights and justice. And so at the end of the day, once you have that, you get peace.
Indeed. That's
yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and the effort and just sharing your brother's story. And we'll do as much as we can to get it out there.
Thank you so much. A pleasure for having me.
Okay, thanks again.
Yeah, bye.